Hey, what's going on with shipping? Sal Mercogliano here. Last day of the Breakbulks America conference. Going to have a follow-up video on the event here. But today what I want to talk about with you are the gray zone operations happening in and around the world. Two events in particularly have transpired. One was the seizure of a tanker by the French Navy off its coast, a Russian Shadow Fleet tanker. The second is a follow-up on the Dutch vessel, the Minerva Grok, that was attacked by the Houthi off the coast of Yemen.
The most recent gray zone operation took place off the coast of France. This story by Joshua Minchin over in Lloyd's List. President Macron said the tanker's crew had committed some, quote, very serious offences, unquote, but remained tight-lipped on whether the tanker served as a launch pad for drones that entered Danish airspace last week. So there were two previous stories on this, one over at Maritime Executive, suspicious drones spotted over the Thyssenkrump sub-building shipyard in Kiel. And this story, Denmark thinks Russia-linked ships launch Copenhagen airport drone raid. Going back to the Lloyd story, the master of a sanctioned tanker has been detained by French authorities after President Macron urged Europe to crank up the pressure on Russia's Shadow Fleet. As reported by Lloyd's earlier this week, Bluesky, an 18-year-old Aframax using the fraudulent Benin flag, deviated towards the French coast on Monday, having been approached by a French naval vessel. The prosecutor's office in Brest, where the formal report was lodged by the Navy, is understood to be investigating the tanker for, quote, lack of documentation of the ship's nationality and flag affiliation and refusal to comply with authorities' instructions, unquote. Bluesky was one of the three ships with Russian links that were understood to have been under investigation in Denmark after suspected drone sightings led Danish authorities to briefly close Copenhagen airport last week. The Danish government, however, has made no move to detain the vessels. President Macron, speaking at a summit of EU leaders in Copenhagen, said the crew had committed some very serious offenses, but when asked by reporters if the tanker was linked to the drone incident last week, he would remain very careful and refuse to implicate Bluesky. He urged Europe to increase the pressure on Russia's Shadow Fleet. You kill the business model by detaining, even for days or weeks, these vessels and forcing them to organize themselves differently. But two individuals Lloyd List understands to be the tanker's master and chief officer were taken into custody by French forces. This is imagery showing you the boarding of the tanker by the French Navy, the Marine Nationale. The chief officer has since been released, Le Monde reported, but the master has been summoned to appear in court next week. Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu confirmed via X that Marine commandos and French naval forces had boarded the tanker over the weekend. He said the two crew members were detained by the Marine gendarme on the orders of the Brest public prosecutor. Lloyd's List understands the crew was unable to present formal proof of the ship's nationality and left several questions posed by the Brest prosecutor unanswered, prompting the investigation. The vessel was described as making suspicious maneuvers off the coast of Saint-Nazaire after it made a sharp turn toward the French coast on September 27. Bluesky moved in circles for several days at an average speed of almost 0 knots. We're not sure exactly when the French Navy deviated this vessel and when the ship was told to go to anchorage off the port of Saint-Nazaire. We've seen images of the French Navy Special Forces on board Bluesky. Here you see two of them up on, or at least three of them actually, on the port bridge wing. In an earlier story by Richard Mead, there was details regarding three vessels, Bluesky being one of them, although the vessel was listed under its former name, Pushpa. This is very common for these ships to change names on an almost daily basis, it seems. The two other vessels was the Astral 1 and the Oslo Carrier number 3. Bluesky had previously loaded Russian crude in Primorsk on September 20th before sailing through the Baltic, passing the English Channel, heading for India. Bluesky had gone through frequent name changes over the past year and also routinely altering its MMSI identity number, its flags. It is owned by Baja Shipping Limited, a brass plate company registered in the Seychelles. The tanker was also targeted in an explosive attack in July when the Sanction tanker is thought to have been damaged by a limpet mine. Details of that attack remain unconfirmed, but the tanker has continued to sail since the incident. On May 14, 2025, the Estonian Navy attempted to intercept the oil tanker Jaguar, now renamed Blint, in the Gulf of Finland, but the vessel refused orders to alter course and continued toward Russia. That incident escalated when a Russian Su-35 fighter jet entered Estonian airspace. Barclay was also involved in a similar incident when it was sailing under one of its previous identities, Koala. The Estonian Navy seized the tanker in April 2025 due to issues with its registration and insurance. The second gray zone operation goes to a vessel we reported on the other day. This is the motor vessel Minerva Gracht. This video comes from on board Minerva Gracht. It shows you the damage caused by the anti-ship ballistic missiles striking the area just forward of the accommodation house, the main superstructure of the ship. Fortunately, there was no cargo on deck, but the missile did cause extensive damage and actually blew out all the forward-facing windows on the superstructure, causing fires to rip through the vessel, prompting the crew to eventually have to abandon ship. This video shows you the boarding of Minerva Gracht by the European Union's Operation Aspides. Small boats, rib boats, were brought alongside. This is obviously in the evening after the initial attack. The crew is going to abandon the vessel. 19 personnel on board. We believe a 16-member crew and 3 armed guards or maritime security detachment were on board by a contractor. Some of the crewmen were winched off by helicopter. We know that 2 of the crew members had been injured during the initial attack. One of them was subsequently flown to Djibouti for further treatment due to the injuries sustained. So fortunately, European Union was on site. Now, this is a Dutch-owned, Dutch-flagged vessel, so this is an attack on the Netherlands, and it'll be interesting to note whether or not the Netherlands and the European Union will respond to this level of attack against a Dutch-owned ship. Here you can see imagery of Minerva Gracht. You can see that hit just forward of the house here and the fire damage caused inside the superstructure of the ship. I noted in my last video that Minerva Gracht, being Dutch flagged, Dutch owned, is a member of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. There is absolutely zero indication that an attack on a NATO vessel will lead to any response. We've had previous attacks on NATO vessels, Norwegian, Greek, U.S. ships. That has not prompted any action by NATO. However, the European Union does have Operation Aspides, this escort operation that is in place in the region. They have been transiting high-value targets through the area, particularly container ships of CMA CGM. This is the most recent image posted by the European Union on October 1st of them escorting ships. Here you can see a tanker in ballast and several appears to be container ships under the escort of a European Union vessel. Again, the Minerva Gracht had not requested escort. It was in the Gulf of Aden, and to tell you the truth, it's pretty far from where we typically see attacks executed by the Houthi against them, and the Houthi have come out and acknowledged the attack. Now, the Houthi have not given any explanation about why they attacked Minerva Gracht. There's no connection with this vessel to Israel. So these gray zone operations appear to be increasing in their scope and scale around the world.
So the escalation of these gray zone incidents mean more instability, more uncertainty on the world's oceans. And that usually transpires to higher costs, higher insurance, just higher everything. And that means that we're seeing this growth of the uncertainty on the blue ocean. Now, Peter Zeihan has talked about this for a long time. He thinks it's going to completely break down and like ocean shipping collapses. I don't think we get to that point. I think what we have wind up is just more instability and more uncertainty. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? You hit that super thanks button down below or head on over to Patreon and become a monthly, yearly subscriber. So signing off here from the Breakbulks America Conference, huge event, absolutely massive. I want to thank everybody for the invite here and the opportunity to do the keynote yesterday. Till our next episode, Sal, signing off.